porque ele veio da Flórida para esse evento. Professor. Este é o livro que ele fez a tradução.
Muito obrigado. Agora, já que eu sou tradutor, eu vou falar em inglês, espero que todo mundo entenda. E eu tive grande prazer de conhecer Tereza, minha mulher e eu conhecemos ela e o marido, os filhos, e sentimos uma grande pena quando ela nos deixou, mas acho que a obra dela continua viva e acho que a apreciação dessa obra vai crescendo cada vez mais com o tempo. Pedra Canga. This novel is both deceptively simple on its surface and yet surprisingly complex once we analyze it in depth. It's told in straightforward prose, but that prose is captivating. It blends mystery, psychological insight, magic realism, bawdy humor, of which you'll see several examples. And the end product is a work that lingers in the reader's mind long after the final page is turned. The true protagonist of this masterful novel is Pedra Canga itself. Through the first-person narration of a young writer, herself a character named Tereza Albuez. Through her, the reader is introduced to the denizens of a small town in the state of Mato Grosso in the Pantanal. I don't have to tell you people what Pantanal is, but the wetlands of Brazil. And although the period is unstated, from internal clues we can deduce that it's sometime around mid-20th century. Yet Pedra Canga as a town remains as backward and as superstition-ridden as if it were a century earlier. It's also a place where magic, some benevolent, some malevolent, seems to happen. From the title itself, we can sense the multi-layered nature of the work. It should be noted that Pedra Canga is a type of ore rich in iron, but the word canga also has, among its various meanings, a yoke, as well as an instrument of torture, similar to a pillory. And pedra, of course, means stone or rock, symbolizing the heavy burden, in my mind, that the inhabitants of that unhappy town have borne for generations. Pedra Canga begins, as it will end, with portentous events evoking the magic realism and the ambiguity that underlies the text. And now I'm quoting. On the night Mr. V lay dying, a storm unlike any ever seen in those parts flattened trees, houses, chicken coops, pigsties, and lampposts. The howling wind was so strong that the frightened domestic animals tried to take refuge inside the house, while others fled in terror for parts unknown. There was even the case of the mason Augusto Campo Velho's pet goat, which was never found. The goat got caught up in a ferocious whirlwind, and the evil one hauled it off into the earth, said Rita Maria, Campobello's wife. A lightning bolt struck the small power plant, leaving Pedra Canga in total darkness. The people, frightened half to death, clutched their saints. You could see people kneeling before their prayer alcoves, intoning litanies, asking Saint Barbara to calm the tempest, making vows, some impossible of fulfillment, in exchange for an answer to their prayers. Maria Bellarmina, some 17 years later, would disagree with the beginning of this account. It wasn't nighttime at all. Everything happened around 3 in the afternoon. The whole world got dark all of a sudden, and we had to light lamps for a time. Because in those days, there weren't any electric lights. No, ma'am. Something evil was commanding the winds. It sounded like the howling of a mad dog or a starving wolf. And there was the sound of drums, laughter, cursing, all mixed together, with a stench so unpowerful that we had to keep our noses covered. The narrator herself is unique in the town of Pedracanga. Intelligent, inquisitive, refusing to accept unquestioningly hidebound traditions, and most significantly, possessing an unflagging curiosity that leads her to investigate for herself conflicting accounts of current and past events at the Vergades estate. Through her explorations and excursions, we are introduced to many of the town's colorful and eccentric characters. I'm going to run down a short list of them. Zé Garbas, Tereza's guitar-playing grandfather, known as Old Sulphur Mouth for his profane put-down of hypocrites and stuffed shirts. Adept at impromptu versifying, he composed on the spot this doggerel to deflate a boasting rival. Nico Silvino, a fisherman who catches only wind, I've known you since we both were boys. Your lies you must defend. But even cornered by a cutlass, I'd swear to heaven that you're gutless. Then there is Marcola, an elderly woman living alone by the river who seems to have a connection with things beyond the perception of others. Respected by all, she takes a liking to the narrator, whose life she saves, perhaps through astral projection. Another character is Ludovica Host Eater, Papa Ostia, a typical sanctimonious, Bible-quoting, small-town busybody spinster who interferes in the lives of others and at one point surreptitiously reads Tereza's diary. Zé Garbas defends his granddaughter in a confrontation outside the church after Sunday Mass, devastating Ludovica in a song duel. Host Eater, leave my granddaughter alone. Mind your own business, you nosy old crone. Don't try to fool us. A virgin you're not. We're all aware who got into your twat. Manilão, provided that he's no fairy, he's the one who got your cherry. Don't try to let on it's a big shock when he's known by all for his 12-inch cock. It's supposed to be funny, I don't know. Feel free to laugh. And the narration goes on. Ludovica fainted and was succored by the daughters of Mary, who carried her bodily into the church. The crowd was divided. Many laughed uproariously. Some censured grandfather's lack of respect, while others wandered away, commenting that Old Sulphur Mouth was really vomiting fire today, and that anyone with a tail of straw should tuck it in and head straight home. The guitarist had outdone himself, and for several days not even my grandmother would speak to him. Other characters, although we don't meet them personally, the Vergades. From their huge estate known as the Mangueiral, the Vergade family has ruled Pedracanga since the days of slavery, which of course ended in 1888. The founder of the dynasty, Colonel Totonio Vergade, was universally feared as a cruel and evil man who, it was rumored, had made a pact with the devil. As the novel opens, the latest descendant of that family, known simply as Mr. V, lies dying. Although we never meet him, his presence hovers over the town. No one in Pedracanga is unaffected by the Vergades, and none dare approach their walled-in compound that dominates the center of town. The sole contact between the townspeople and the mysterious Vergades is a mulatto servant, slave, named Nastasio, who emerges from time to time to purchase supplies for the family. And then, perhaps the most mysterious characters of all are the strangers. You see them depicted on the Brazilian cover of the book, a cover, incidentally, which I think is far superior to the English one. English version cover, but
This one.
yeah.
This one here is the first one.
The strangers are, as I think of them, the ant people.
The second.
After,
Yes, the ant people.
after Mr. V's death, a silent, relentless horde descends on the property. As the author says, I'm quoting again, sometimes entire families pass by with sacks or crates whose contents we can only guess. They began arriving very early in the morning and didn't stop until nightfall. They're invading the Begati's property. They seemed like an anthill in their ceaseless movement. The speed with which they came and went made it seem as if they were stealing, which in fact they were. More than that, they were swallowing up everything. In 2 weeks, they ate up the fruits, the vegetables, the herbs, then the livestock, chickens, turkeys, geese, pigs, goats. They didn't even spare some mongrels they chanced upon, sniffing out something to eat. They even dug up paving stones. They attacked the fences. They tore down fence posts and rolled up the barbed wire. They destroyed the walls and obliterated the Mangueral boundary lines from the ground. They worked in silence. They walked with rapid steps, heads lowered, in a rhythm that obeyed some unknown cadence. An invisible command seemed to drive them. That's the end of that quote. They came to be known as the living dead. Manet Pitchpenny, owner of the Gimme More bar, Quero Mais in Portuguese, commented that although they would come into his bar and order things by pointing, they never spoke with anyone. And another character is the house. Despite the predations in the land itself, it was soon stripped bare of its fruits and vegetables. Quote, and I'm quoting, the huge old Vergati house continued intact, larger than ever now that there were no trees, walls, or fences blocking the view. It stood there, imposing, like a feudal castle, affirming the Lord's power over its dominions. The house took on a personality and became the focus of discussion in Pedracanda. According to many, it had moods, varying from total happiness to deepest depression, from love to boundless hate, moods that manifested themselves by change in color.